again to the chat. The eyes of the racing world here in Australia have been on WA the last couple of weeks. And joining me today from Sky Racing in Western Australia is Brittany Taylor. Hi, Brittany. How are you today?
Hi, Ben. I'm good. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for joining us to take some time out of what's usually a very busy time for you. I believe you are still riding track work as well.
Yes, I am. I was at track work this morning, and usually I would say how much I love the job, but this morning it was raining in Perth, which is not usually a common occurrence at this time of year, but it was raining and it was very, very windy, and anyone who has anything to do with horses knows that firstly on a Monday you usually get sort of your fresh horses and then you combine the wind, so they're all jumping out of their skin this morning. I was had to strap myself in.
But being windy and wet over there, it's not something you usually associate with Western Australia, because the last two Saturdays, which has been the last two parts of the Carnival over there, have been beautiful weather. And we've seen some pretty good racing the last two Saturdays over there, haven't we?
Oh, it's been fantastic. And yeah, you're right. This is very not common weather here in WA, but the sun is coming out for the rest of the week, and the third day of the Tab Touch Masters is meant to be beautiful conditions. But the first two Saturdays have been fantastic. Obviously the Railway Stakes in week one, and then on the weekend just gone the Winterbottom Stakes.
And looking ahead to the third Saturday, which is this Saturday, obviously we haven't got final fields yet, but who do you like for the Railway?
Well, as we're recording now, it's starting to come together, this field for the Kingston Town. And I think, look, everyone will tip you into Inspirational Girl after her Railway win, and she was oh so impressive. I thought Too Close to the Sun was also very, very impressive. He's a horse that previously hasn't won below 1,700 metres, so he's only going to be further suited up to the 1,800. And he sat on top of a very hot tempo. It was a very, very quick speed, that Railway. So I think up to the 1,800, he's going to prove really hard to get past.
Come from a famous racing family. Obviously your father and I believe your grandmother was involved too. Was your dad the main inspiration for you to want to work in racing? You know, you're a track work rider, but you also do your media as well. Obviously being Jim Taylor, the famous jockey in WA and now a trainer.
Well, I think he definitely introduced me to the industry. I was never pushed as a child or young adult to work in racing or anything like that. It was always just something that the family did. And I think you grow up within an industry that is so exciting, the lure of being a part of it is always there. So whilst I guess he introduced me to it, I was never pushed to work in it or anything like that. And probably more than anything I've learned from Dad along the way is, about work ethic. And, he works 7 days a week. There's no such thing as holidays or time off. And I think I've been able to adopt that in my own work.
And you talk about it being a 7-day-a-week job for your dad, but what does your typical day consist of, either track work or when you're working with Sky?
Look, it is 7 days. I sort of have a lot of different roles, whether it be I ride track work pretty much every morning. I work for Sky doing the broadcast here for all the metro meetings. So it's Wednesday and Saturday, and then typically do a Sunday wherever that may be in the country as well. So that's 2 to 3 full days a week. And then it's obviously the preparation that goes into that. And I do all our stable communications as well for our own stable. So between sending out sort of owner updates, doing the form, it definitely is a full 7-day-a-week job, and you don't really get much time away from it.
And you mentioned those country meetings. I saw you recently in an interview with a very good friend of yours on Ticker, and you were talking about how much fun going to the country meetings is in WA. Some of those tracks, they just look so far flung, but it looks like everyone's just having a great time. Can you tell us a bit more about how important country racing is in WA?
Yeah, I've been lucky enough to go to pretty much every country destination there is in WA that holds racing. I think there's only a couple that I still need to tick off the bucket list. And every time you go there, you just get that sense of how important it is for the local community. And often in towns, they don't have a lot else in the town in terms of entertainment, and the races is sort of the draw card, and it also is during carnival time. It's what brings people into the town. It's really, really good for the economy, like the Kalgoorlie round that brought in so many people. The town didn't know what to do with itself this year. There were so many people because of the COVID restrictions. Everyone had to travel locally. So that was extremely popular this year, and it's one of the top rounds. If I had to say there's one that you need to go to, it's the Broome round. It is honestly the most picturesque racecourse I've ever been to, and it's just a really lovely time. Everyone's got that holiday feel to them, and it's just that little bit more relaxed sort of nature. There's always two up after the last, and the nightlife is always really good at those sort of country destinations. So it's really important for the community.
It's really interesting too, Britt. There's quite a few jockeys over there in WA. They make a career out of practically riding those carnivals. I know Chris Nickel reasonably well. He lives here in Victoria, but he goes up every year and he says, mate, it's like one big riding holiday for me when he goes over there.
Well, that's exactly it. Is in terms of a riding fee, you get paid the same whether you're riding at, Ascot or Kojonup. So it doesn't matter sort of where you're riding. If you're able to pick up a nice full book, you're able to make a lovely living out of it. And then if you're treating it as a bit of a holiday, you're only riding, the once a week, or especially in Broome, it's Broome time. So there's no such thing as early morning track work. It's 7 a.m. They all roll down to the beach and work them. And it's very cruisy lifestyle. And there's a reason why so many trainers and jockeys spend those winter months in a place like Broome.
And there's quite a few up-and-coming younger female riders in WA, like Jade McNaught, and then she's obviously a bit older too, Lucy Warwick. She was over here in Victoria for a time. Can you see some of those other girls coming over here to Victoria or going to New South Wales to test themselves a bit?
Look, I think gender aside, it's really hard to sort of break into some of those, top-notch jockey ranks. We're seeing recently so many jockeys like Brad Rawiller, who of course won the Winterbottom on the weekend. He's made the decision to relocate to WA because opportunities is just so hard when you're with those, the top echelon of jockeys, and everyone has their connections already. So I'm sure in terms of ability, they certainly could match it, but it's really difficult just to sort of cut through and get that opportunity. And I truly believe you're only as good as the opportunities that you're afforded and the type of horses that you do get to sit on. But yeah, certainly it would be great, even particularly for the apprentices. I think when you have that luxury of a claim, there is an incentive for people to put you on, and for them to even just do a stint in a place like New South Wales or Victoria. I think you just gain a whole new perspective, a new understanding when you're riding with different riders, different tracks for different trainers. It all comes down to that experience, and that can only be a good thing.
Talk about experience. We recently interviewed Willie Pike on our show, and he was telling us that he loved coming down here. I mean, he sort of got the monkey off his back because he was able to prove that he can win races in Victoria. But he said he learned so much because the way we race here is very different to the West.
What I love with everything that he said is that how he had to put his irons up, because typically Willie rides pretty long. He's a hands and heels sort of rider. And when he was in Melbourne, he just felt the horses were creeping away from him a little bit. He felt that the tempo slackens off more so than it does in WA, which I found interesting actually. And he's been able to, he modified his style a little bit to suit the racing over there, but as soon as he's come back, he's sort of back to the long irons. And when we saw him boot home Inspirational Girl, it was hands and heels all the way. And it's just been so good to watch what he's been able to do over East. We know here how good he is. He is just an absolute sensation over here. But to be able to see him go and prove himself over East, I think the whole of WA were just so proud of him.
You're also the manager for the Racing League, which is a new sort of form of syndication. Can you tell us about your role and what the Racing League's all about?
Well, basically it is a new form of micro-ownership, which I think is the way forward in terms of getting the everyday person on the street to be involved in racing. We've come a long way already from what was once upon a time people only owning, 100% shares or 50% shares, and to now, people can purchase at 2.5% or 1%, but this is taking it a whole nother step further. And just allows people who still maybe can't get in at that 2.5% price point that, for $200, they can be involved in 6 racehorses. So I think it's wonderful in terms of inclusion and allowing people a taster to our industry. And, you know, those horses will be trained by 6 different trainers, and they'll receive their regular updates, you know, the photos, the videos, the audio recordings from top trainers. And it'll give people an insight into sort of how people do things differently, how those horses are actually trained. You know, a lot of punters probably, you know, they know their form back to front, but do they know actually what happens to a horse on Tuesday when they gallop, or how do they recover on the Wednesday, or when they race on Saturday, what do they do on Sunday morning? And this is going to allow people that insight and to be a part of something and to have that tribalism. So, yeah, I can't wait to see that get underway next year.
Talk about that model. It's already done quite well in America. I think it was the Kentucky Derby winner this year was under the same model. And even there was some Aussies, and even I believe Aidan Wadley from Trackside in New Zealand had his share as well. And it was pretty cool to be able to say, oh, wow, an Aussie or a Kiwi had his share in a Kentucky Derby winner. Like, it's not just any race, it's the Kentucky Derby.
And that can only be good for racing. So whilst, you know, you say, oh, well, they wouldn't have, you know, made money out of it. Sometimes it's not about that. It doesn't need to be about, you know, making a big return in a Kentucky Derby. How exciting is that to be involved with that horse? They would have been, you know, following the lead up. They would have had all the same emotions that someone would if they'd owned 100% of it, you know, the nerves before the race. And I think there were 4,500 people in that Kentucky Derby win. Like, how great is that for racing? That those 4,500 people then share it with their family and friends who are like, oh, well, I know Bob, he's got a share in this. Let's watch it. You know, I think it's really, really good for racing.
Just back on your role with Sky, what kind of preparation do you have to do before you go to air and like in the days leading up to it?
Well, I think when it comes to racing and form, there's probably never an end point to preparation. You could prepare all week, all day, and you'd still be more replays to watch and more figures to look at and things like that. But I try and take it sort of one meeting at a time. So, you know, for the Wednesday meeting, that's usually, you know, Tuesday's job to get through that. And I tend to spend Thursday and Friday doing the form for Saturday's meeting. So, yeah, it's a fair bit of preparation. Naturally, my role as a host is a little bit different to the form analyst. You know, I'm not necessarily having to tip winners at every meeting, but I still feel like as a host and wanting to get the most out of your, you know, interviews when you've got the trainer, it involves knowing the horse's form and, you know, where they might be going next and knowing where the programming is at. So, yeah, there's a fair bit that goes into it, but I do sort of live and breathe WA racing, so it sort of starts to just cement itself in your brain.
You talk form analyst, you've got your co-host and form analyst in Scott Embry. I believe you guys have a bit of banter off air sometimes. There's a video I've seen on social media of you jumping up and down dancing after picking a winner, but he was a bit embarrassed that you were on camera dancing or something. What was that all about?
Oh, Scotty's one of my best mates. So, yeah, there's plenty of off-air banter, I'm sure. I think sometimes the Sky Racing Active feed gets left open. I can only imagine if people were listening to us talking off-air. It's just constant sort of throwing stones at each other and making fun of each other. He never usually watches a race around me, and I've seen a couple of videos of myself, and I probably understand why no one likes to watch races around me. I can't help but watch and be so passionate about it. I wish I could sit still and not scream at the TV or the track, but it's just not in me to do it.
And then obviously down here in Melbourne, you've got a bit of a profile now because you do the horseback interviews during Melbourne Cup week for Channel 10. How did you come to do that role? And do you enjoy coming to Melbourne? You've done it the last 2 years now.
Yeah, I've loved it. Obviously this year was a whole different ball game to what last year was. It was crazy for me. I've never seen that many people at a race course as I did on that first Derby day that I did. And, you know, looking at the grounds are just completely full. It was quite remarkable for me. And I just hadn't seen that. But this year, completely different. No crowds, obviously. But it's just such a pleasure to be able to ride up next to the quality of horse flesh. You know, some people get starstruck by celebrities. Well, for me, it's horses. I see, you know, a really good horse and you're kind of like, oh, wow, like you're literally there. You can pat the Melbourne Cup winner. And that's really special, being able to capture those emotions as well. That's the biggest moment of someone's not only career, but their life. and you're there to get the first word from them. And I just can't help but feel you just feel so happy in their presence, and you feed off their energy, and you ride back after the interview, think, God, this is why I love this game.
Obviously, working with one of your fellow Sky presenters in Dave Gator Gately and also Peter Moody, that must be pretty cool too. And you would have learned a bit from both of them as well.
Absolutely. You know, these are people that I've watched for years in racing. Gator is, you know, a top quality form analyst, and Moods is such a straight shooter, a wonderful trainer, and says it how it is. So, you know, being able to work with quality people, I think you learn something from every sort of group of people you work with as well. And I always try and take sort of something from everyone who I work with, be it in regards to how they do form or how they present or how they interview. And I think the more people that you can work with and talk to, and you should sort of improve on your own presentation.
Staying on Melbourne too, Britt, do you harbour any ambitions to come down here and work in racing media here and also ride track work? Because one thing I do hear from Victorian trainers a lot is we can't get enough people to ride track work.
Really, yeah. And never say never. I'm always sort of, you know, open to opportunity, and I love being able to be really diverse in my work. And I think that's the reason why I love being here in WA, is because the diversity of the work that I do is so broad, and it keeps life very interesting, and it keeps me being able to work in all facets of the industry, not just being pigeonholed in sort of one area. I'm able to contribute in lots of different spaces. So, I mean, that's what I love about Perth. I love the WA racing industry and the people that are here. But with that being said, every time I've been, you know, in Melbourne, I've loved my time there as well.
Just one last one too. They recently changed the model up within the last couple of years of like making the Masters, like having a Group 1 across, I think it's 3 or 4 Saturdays now. How much does that improve like the Metro Saturday graded racing? Because previously, us over here in the Eastern States, we only really used to watch racing probably for the Perth Cup or like one or two other meetings. But now it's like almost a whole month. Everyone's watching WA racing over this side of Australia.
Yeah, I think it's been really important. In the past, we had Super Saturday, and that was the Railway and the Winterbottom on the same day, which it was wonderful in terms of this big bonanza of racing. But I remember we won the Winterbottom, or Dad did, the year that it was a Super Saturday, and we won the Winterbottom. And, you know, that's such a big deal. You win a Group 1, but it was overshadowed half an hour later by the Railway running. So I like the fact that they've split them up, because it just means that on Railway Day, you can pay full credit to the Group 1 Railway winner. And then the next week, it's all about the Winterbottom winner. It's not trying to, I guess, compact too much on one day. It's able to really take hold of that space for WA, that say this is our time slot here, and we've got these 3 consecutive weeks of Group 1 racing. So I think it's worked well.
All right. Thanks very much for joining us today, Britt. It's been great to get a bit of an insight into what you're about and WA racing.
Thanks so much, Ben.